Alright, it's been 3 weeks since we got the survey back on Albinoni, the first Catana 41 that we'd made an offer on. We found out that she suffered a major accident back in 2014 and she'd been repaired, but Dream Yacht offered us up a sister ship named Tchaikovsky, which they're going to give us at the same price as Albinoni. The only problem was that Tchaikovsky was out on charter for another 3 weeks, and so Mariah and I, we decided to take the patient route and delay purchasing our boat until we could check out Tchaikovsky. I got down here early, had to sit around for 6 days before I could get onto the new boat, but I got on Tchaikovsky on Thursday afternoon, and immediately I started going through her, and in general, it looked like she was better than Albinoni. She had, slightly better cosmetically. The head sails had UV covers on them and were in better shape because of that, even though they were a year older. The running rigging was in better shape, and I slept on Tchaikovsky that first night, kind of thinking that that this was going to be our new boat. I woke the next morning to a beautiful sunrise, but this is really going to be the day that would tell us if this boat was going to be it. Boys came down 8 o'clock in the morning, and we motored off to the haul-out yard. First thing I noticed was the vibrations from the engines were terrible. This boat had 30 horsepower 3-cylinder Yanmars on it, while Albinoni had 40 horsepower 4-cylinder Volvos. And those Volvos were just silky smooth. You could hardly hear them when they were on, and they powered the boat really well. This boat, I think one of the engines must have a problem, because you fired them up and the entire boat was just shaking itself to pieces. The stove was rattling like crazy. Everything, the doors on the heads that don't really fit all that well and the hinges are bad on were rattling around, and it was very worrisome. It definitely gave me a bad feeling compared to Albinoni. That actually always gave me a warm fuzzy when we had the engines on. And 3-cylinder engines are never going to be as smooth as 4-cylinder engines. They're better than 2-cylinder engines, but the engines were definitely going to be a problem. But anyway, we took off. We motored around the corner, a couple miles to get to the haul-out yard. Beautiful facilities here. We pulled in. There was a nice big New Holland tractor waiting there to pull us out with a hydraulic trailer that was only 3 months old. There's actually 2 haul facilities right next to each other. The first one did have a small travel lift, like maybe 30 tons. I think it might have even only been a 20-ton travel lift. And then it had a boat ramp right next to it with a hydraulic trailer like the one that we used. But then we went to the next door boatyard that didn't even have a travel lift. They only had the hydraulic trailer. And looking around the anchorages here in French Polynesia, you can tell that catamarans are taking over the cruising fleet. Back when I was cruising through here 12 years ago, there were catamarans out there for sure, but they were less than 10% of the cruising fleet, and now they're well over 50%. And it's really telling that the 2 boatyards here, one of them doesn't even have a travel lift to haul out monohulls. The catamarans generally, because they're so wide, they don't fit well into travel lifts, and they're much better to haul out with a hydraulic trailer that supports the crossbeam, the bridge deck of the catamaran. So really interesting going over for the haul out. By 8:30 we were out of the water, began to inspect the hull, and I immediately noticed water draining out of the starboard rudder. It continued to drain for the next 3 hours. That was not good. I also noticed that the port daggerboard had water draining out of it. So both the rudder and the daggerboard were obviously taking on water, and would eventually cause delamination between the fiberglass and the foam core. Daggerboards are relatively easy to fix because you can take them out of the water. You can take them out of the hull without taking the boat out of the water, and you can work on them. Rudders less so. And my big 3 for deal breakers on taking a boat and is steering, rigging, and sails. And obviously a compromised rudder compromises your steering system. Yes, catamarans are redundant. That's great. You have 2 rudders, but I definitely, having that broken or cracked rudder giving me pause right off the bat. And so there's 1 point for Albinoni over Tchaikovsky. My surveyor didn't arrive for another 2.5 hours, so I went on inspecting the hull on my own. Found numerous hull blisters. There are blisters all over this boat, well over 50 of them, which is odd because Catana uses vinyl ester resin on the outside, the last layer or two of fiberglass, actually the first layer or two after the gel coat when they put it in the mold. And that vinyl ester resin is supposed to prevent hull blisters all over this boat. I also found numerous spots that had been repaired badly. Paint wasn't adhering to these spots, and where the paint was flaking off, you could tell that there was actually no barrier coat underneath. And that gave me a lot of pause, which is also some reason why you can get some of that osmotic blistering. Also found that the fiberglass support that the starboard trampoline attaches to had a big crack in it, about 4 inches long. Where the anchor chain came out of the anchor locker is the same as Albinoni. Both boats were having chafe, where the anchor chain was actually running over the fiberglass hull and cut down about 4 inches into it, into the foam core. So that's obviously a design flaw, and I'd have to fix that on either boat. So the surveyor did finally get there, and I immediately started pointing out the spots that I was worried about. He popped open a couple of the blisters, and he got kind of a vinegary smell from them, which is a telltale sign of osmotic blistering, that it was in the hull. These weren't just paint blisters. He also showed me on the starboard daggerboard trunk where the daggerboard trunk was actually cracked open and been taking water into the core, and also that starboard rudder that was cracked that I had noticed. Well, it turns out that it had hit something hard enough that it forced the rudder back up into the hull of the boat, the underside of the hull, and it cracked open the underside of the hull, and that had never been repaired. So that was taking on water into the core. So Albinoni came through survey clean below the waterline, and this boat already was at the point where I'm like, I'm done with it. I gave the surveyor $100 for coming down. He spent half an hour looking at the boat, and he agreed with me. Like, no, the first boat was a much better boat. So I packed up my stuff. I moved off Tchaikovsky and back into Villa Buda, where I am right now. Ryan and I, we had a conversation on the phone, and then we slept on it, and then we talked yesterday for hours as well. And when it comes down to it, we've been looking for a catamaran for over 3 years now. Albinoni is in our budget, and she suits our needs. She's not a super high performance boat, but she's performance oriented. The accommodations suck. We hate the interior. We're definitely going to be remodeling the interior, especially the galley, making it far better, more of a chef's galley. But the exterior is so good. We love the cockpit. We love the controls from the boat. We love the outboard helms. We love the sail handling stations. Everything can be done from a nice, secure inside steering position. We love the feel of the boat. The mechanical steering, when you're sailing it, it doesn't feel like you're driving a school bus. It feels like you're sailing a boat. And so many boats that have hydraulic steering up at the bulkhead, you're out of the weather and you just don't get any feel from the boat. And so these boats, they speak to us, and I think even with all the damage that happened to her, she was professionally repaired, and she showed much better than Tchaikovsky, who's obviously been damaged a lot as well, but it's been just patched up over time as opposed to having a big major repair job done professionally by a yard. So Albinoni is coming back off the charter today. I'm going to be moving down on her and doing an inspection to make sure that nothing has changed since we were down here a month ago. And here's hoping. We're going to transfer money Monday or Tuesday, get the paperwork going, and by the end of next week, we might just be catamaran owners. So here's hoping, and I will keep you posted.